The ninth deed, part 3 of the Acts of Thomas. From the Apocryphal Acts of Paul, Peter, John, Andrew, and Thomas by Bernhard PICK. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. The Acts of Thomas, ninth deed, part 3. Chapter 108. And all the prisoners saw him pray, and asked him to pray for them. After having prayed, and having been seated, he began to repeat the following psalm. When I was a minor and in the palace of my father, enjoying the riches and abundance of those who brought me up, from the east, our home, the parents, having equipped me, sent me away. From the richness of their treasuries they supplied a burden, great and yet light, that I alone could carry it. Gold is the burden from above, and silver from the great treasuries, and chalcedone stones from India, and pearls from the land of Cosan. And they supplied me with a diamond, which can break the iron, and took off my garment, wrought in gold and jeweled, which they made in their love, and the cloak as yellow as gold, which answered my size. And they agreed with me, and wrote it into my heart, that I should not forget it. When thou goest down into Egypt, to fetch thence the one pearl, which is there in the midst of the sea, which the devouring serpent surrounds, thou shalt put on the jeweled garment and the cloak which thou hast enjoyed, and with thy brother, our nearest kin, thou shalt be heir in our kingdom. Chapter 109. I came from the east and went down on a difficult, dangerous road, accompanied by 2 guides, for I was inexperienced to travel on it. I passed by the border of Messina, the stopping place of the merchants of the east, came into the land of the Babylonians, and entered within the walls of Sarbug. And when I had come to Egypt, the guides, my fellow travelers, left me. I betook myself by the shortest road to the serpent, settled about its cave, and waited till it slept, that I might secretly take my pearl. And when I was alone, and in my appearance appeared strange to my room-mates, I noticed there was a countryman from the east, the free, a young man, lovely and beautiful, a son of the nobles. He came, lived with me, and became my companion, and I made him a friend and comrade of my undertaking. But I cautioned him against the Egyptians, and against the communion with these unclean ones. But I dressed like them, not to appear to them as a stranger, as one who came from abroad to obtain the pearl, that the Egyptians excited not the serpent against me. But from some cause, whatever it be, they learned that I was not from their country. And with deceit and cunning they rose up against me. And I partook of their meals. I knew no more than I was a king's son, and served their king, and forgot also the pearl, for which my parents had sent me. And owing to the heaviness of their food, I sunk into a deep sleep. Chapter 110. When I suffered thus, my parents perceived it, and were afflicted for me. And a message was announced in our kingdom, that all should come to the gates. And the kings and worthies of Parthia and all the great ones of the east passed a resolution on my account, that I should not remain in Egypt. And those in power wrote also to me, by signing their names as follows: From thy father, the King of kings, and from thy mother, which rules the east, and from thy brother, the second after us, to our son in Egypt, greeting. Arise and wake up from the sleep, and hear the words of the letter, and consider that thou art a king's son. Behold, thou hast taken upon thee a slave's yoke. Think of the pearl, on whose account thou went to Egypt. Think of thy gold-wrought garment. Think of the glorious toga which thou art to put on, and with which thou art to adorn thyself. Thy name was mentioned in the book of life, and with thy brother, our substitute, thou shalt be in our kingdom. Chapter 111. My letter is a letter which the king has sealed because of the wicked Babylonians and the tyrannical demons of Labyrinth. The letter flew like the eagle, the king of all fowls. It flew and came down to me, and was all speech. Through its voice and its audible sound I started up from the sleep, took it and kissed it, broke its seal and read. Its contents agreed with that which was written in my heart. At once I remembered that I am a king's son, and my free origin longed after its kind. I also remembered the pearl, for which I was sent to Egypt. And with sayings I began to enchant the fearful and devouring serpent. I lulled it asleep and sunk it into slumber. For I mentioned the name of my father over it, and the name of our second one, and of my mother, the queen of the East. And I seized the pearl, and returned to bring it to my parents. And I took off the dirty garment, and left it behind in its country. And immediately I directed my way to the light of my country in the East. And on the way I found my letter before me, which had started me. And as it started me who was asleep by its voice, it also led me through the light proceeding from it. For the royal letter made of Syrian tissue shone sometimes before my eyes. And by its voice and guidance it encouraged again my haste. And love leading and drawing me, I passed by Labyrinth, left Babylon to my left, and came to the great Messina, the port of the merchants, situated at the seashore, and my precious garment which I had taken off, and the cloak with which I was clothed, from the heights of Warkan my parents had sent by their treasurers, whom they had entrusted with them because of their faithfulness. Chapter 112. But I remembered no more its splendor, for as a young boy I left it in the palace of the Father. Suddenly I saw the glorious garment looking like a mirror of mine. I beheld it entirely in me. I knew and saw myself wholly by it. We were two, different from each other, and yet again one, in the same form. Yea, the treasurers also I saw as two, which had brought the garment, and yet they had one form. Both wore a royal symbol, the treasure and riches they had in hands, and returned what belonged to me, the glorious garment, adorned in shining colors, with gold and precious stones, and pearls in apparent color. They were fastened above, and with diamonds all its seams were put together. And the picture of the King of Kings was fully on the entire garment, and sapphire stones were fittingly fastened above. Chapter 113. And again I saw that the impulses of knowledge proceeded from the whole, and it was ready to speak. I heard, however, how it spoke with those which had brought it. I descend from the bravest of all men, on which account I was educated by the Father himself, and I perceived myself how my greatness grew in correspondence to his energy. And with its royal motions it wholly moved toward me. From the bearer's hand it hastened away, striving after him who should receive it. An ardent desire seized me also to go to meet it and to receive it. And I stretched myself and took it, and adorned myself with the beauty of its colors. And my cloak, which surpassed that of a king, I wholly put around me. And having put it on, I was lifted up to the gate of salutation and adoration, and I bowed my head and worshipped the splendor of the Father who had sent it to me, whose behests I had executed. In like manner he also did as he had promised. And in the gates of his palace I mingled among his great ones. And he rejoiced over me and received me, and I was with him and his palace. All his subjects, however, praise him with joyous voices. And he promised me that to the gate of the King of kings I should go with him, that with my offerings and the pearl, together with him, I appear before the king. Chapter 114. Charis went home rejoicing, believing that his wife would live with him again and be as she was before, ere she heard the divine word and believed in Jesus. Coming back, he found her hair cut off and her garment rent. Seeing her, he said to her, "My lady Mygdonia, why does this nauseous disease take possession of thee? And why hast thou done this? I am thy husband since the time of thy virginity, and the gods as well as the laws give me the right to rule over thee. What is this great madness of thine that makes thee ridiculous in the eyes of all the people? Put away the anxiety which comes from that sorcerer. I shall remove his sight, that thou shalt see him no more." Chapter 115. When Mygdonia heard these words, she gave vent to her feelings, and sighed and lamented. And Charis said again, "I must have greatly sinned against the gods, that they have entangled me into such a disease. I pray thee, Mygdonia, torment not my soul by this thy lamentable sight and humble appearance, and make my heart not heavy through the anxiety for thee. I am thy husband, Charis, whom all the people honor and fear. What shall I do? I know not how to act. What shall I think? Shall I keep silence and bear? And who can bear it when his treasure is taken from him? And who could tolerate to be deprived of thy good manners? Thy sweet savor is in my nostrils, and thy cheerful face is in my eyes. They take away my soul, and the very beautiful body which I enjoyed when I saw it, they destroy and blind the sharp-looking eye and cut off my right hand. My joy is turned into sadness, and my life into death. The light is dipped into darkness. None of my relatives shall see me any more, none of whom have helped me. And the gods of the East I shall worship no more, which have surrounded me with such great misfortune. And indeed, I shall no more pray to them, nor sacrifice to them, having been deprived of my wife. What else shall I ask of them? All my glory has been taken away, and I am a prince, the second in the government of the king. All this Mygdonia has taken from me by rejecting me. No matter if they knock my eyes out, if only thou turnest thy eyes upon me in the accustomed manner. Chapter 116. While Charis was speaking thus with tears, Mygdonia sat silent and looked on the ground. He came near and said, "My most beloved lady Mygdonia, remember that of all the women in India, I selected thee as the most beautiful, and took thee, although I could have married others more beautiful than thee. But no, I lie, Mygdonia, for by the gods it is impossible to find one like thee in the land of the Indians. Woe to me ever, that thou dost not even answer me! Abuse me, if it pleases thee, but speak. Look at me and see that I am by far better and more beautiful than that sorcerer. I have riches and honor, and I know that none has such a family as mine. But thou art my riches and honor, thou art family and kindred. And behold, he separates thee from me. Chapter 117. When Charis had said this, Mygdonia said to him, He whom I love is better than thee and thy possession. For thy possession, being earthly, returns to earth. But he whom I love is heavenly, and shall bring me also into heaven. Thy riches shall pass away, and thy beauty shall be destroyed. So likewise thy garments and thy many works. And thou remainest alone with thy trespasses. But remind me not of thy actions to me, for I prayed to the Lord that thou wouldest forget and think no more of the former pleasures and the bodily connection, which shall pass like a shadow. Jesus alone remains forever, and the souls which trust in him. Jesus himself shall free me from the filthy deeds which I did before with thee. Upon hearing this, Charis, broken in his soul, turned to sleep, saying to her, Think the matter over during the night. If thou wilt be with me as before, ere thou didst see the sorcerer, I will fulfill all thy wishes, and if it pleases thee on account of thy disposition toward him, I shall release him from the prison and set him free and let him go to another country. And I shall not grieve thee, for I know how much thou thinkest of the stranger. He made not a beginning with thee, but like thee he also deceived many other women. These have come to their senses and think differently. Now consider my words, and make me not a reproach in the land of the Indians. Chapter 118. Thus speaking, he fell asleep. And she took 10 denarii and went secretly away to give them to the keepers of the prison, in order to be permitted to go to the apostle. By the way, Judas Thomas met her, who went to her. Upon seeing him, she was afraid, because she took him for one of the princes, as much light went before him. And running away, she said within herself, I have ruined thee, poor soul, for thou shalt not again see Judas, the apostle of the living God, and hast not received the holy seal. And running away, she went to a narrow place and hid herself there, saying, It is better to be caught by poorer ones, which one can persuade, than to meet with this powerful prince, who despises presents. End of the 9th deed of the Acts of Thomas.